Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. So you guys all know I've been following this story down in Florida about Frank Artiles. He's the former Republican lawmaker who was recently arrested. He was charged with 5 felonies for paying Alex Rodriguez to siphon votes away from the Democrat down there. And you also know, if you've been following the show, that there's 2 other candidates with identical profiles to this Alex Rodriguez. They did no fundraising, no public appearances. In fact, they avoided the press at all costs. And all 3 of them benefited from over $500,000 in mailers that were identical to each other. So prosecutors, through their investigation with Artiles and Rodriguez, they've been trying to figure out who funded this whole scam, because it's clear that they're all 3 related, and it's also clear that Artiles didn't act on his own. And he allegedly told Rodriguez, quote, "We have money in an account." So who's we? So to determine the source of these funds and who may have been really pulling the strings in all of this, prosecutors recently obtained bank records for a nonprofit, which is funded by dark money sources, more dark money sources, meaning they have no idea who's funding it, because these groups don't have to disclose where the source of their funding is coming from. And no surprise, you guys are not going to be shocked by this at all, but this is also tied to a dirty Republican politician. So the nonprofit is called Let's Preserve the American Dream, and it's run by a political strategist who also works with a big business lobbying group called Associated Industries of Florida. So it's AIF for short. In fact, Let's Preserve the American Dream is actually located it's housed within AIF's headquarters. That's how closely tied they are. They work out of the same building, which is a 15,000 square foot mansion in Tallahassee, Florida. Now, don't let the fact that AIF is run out of a home, if you can call it that, out of a mansion, don't let that fool you, because this organization is well funded. They're funded by the likes of Walt Disney World and the Florida Power and Light Company. So companies of that caliber. Now, here's where it gets super interesting. The person who runs AIF, so the mega company that works with Disney World and all of them, the person who runs that company is Tom Feeney. Feeney was once the Republican State House Speaker, and he was a U.S. congressman. He lost his reelection bid, however, after he was investigated for taking this trip. He took a golf trip to Scotland, and the trip was paid for by a convicted lobbyist. The Department of Justice investigated all of this, and they dropped the case against him. However, the House Ethics Committee, which I think it had a different name at that time, they said he violated the House rules, so he had to pay back essentially the cost of the trip. It ended up being over $5,600 he had to pay to the Treasury, but the bad press cost him his reelection. Well, several years before that scandal broke, Feeney was also accused of, wait for it, hiring a guy named Clint Curtis, to write a computer program to secretly, quote, flip the vote 51 to 49 to whoever you wanted to win. This Curtis guy actually said that. He testified in a hearing in Ohio. He was talking about voter fraud, and he told lawmakers that that's what Feeney asked him to do. He said that when he was first hired, he thought Feeney was hiring him because he wanted him to write code to prevent election fraud. Then Feeney hits him up with this nefarious ask. So allegedly, right? Because none of this went to court. But Curtis was so disgusted by this. He was a Republican when he was hired by Feeney. He was so disgusted by all of this, he actually changed his party affiliation from Republican to Democrat, and then he ran against Feeney in several different elections. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. He wasn't the nominee. But this whole election fraud BS that the Republican Party is pushing right now, it's complete projection. They know they've tried to do it. They know this is in their wheelhouse. This is something that they would absolutely go for. So they assume, oh, everybody must be doing it. The other side has to be guilty of it too if we're willing to do it. And we're such good Christians, right? And they're not. They're horrible people. So what would they do? If we would if we would rig an election, what would they do? These baby-eating pedophiles. So in regard to this new voter fraud thing, and in regard to these 3 fake candidates, reporters for the Orlando Sentinel reached out to the executive director of Let's Preserve the American Dream. It's a man named Ryan Tyson. He said they weren't even aware that their bank records had been seized until the reporter brought it to their attention and reached out. And Tyson has his own direct ties to AIF. He was once the vice president for AIF. And he now says that, he does contract work for AIF as a political counsel, but you're going to love this part too. He said that Let's Preserve the American Dream just rents space from them. The two organizations don't have anything to do with each other. Sure, Jan. He said, quote, AIF has no control or knowledge of our activities around the country. Yeah, they just happen to be in the same building. They just happen to have all these ties to each other. And the people who work for this American Dream nonsense also does work for AIF, but they're not related at all. But that's not it, because prosecutors have also obtained the phone records of a man named Alex Alvarado. So Alvarado is a Republican consultant, and he was paid by groups linked to AIF. He was also somehow involved in sending out the mailers for these 3 fake candidates. Now, here's some really great news, because we knew about this investigation. We knew about the Artiles case and Rodriguez, but there wasn't until now any indication that the other 2 fake candidates were being investigated. Well, now we know that they actually are, because newly filed court records show that they've obtained documents, they've obtained records for a PAC that's called The Truth, which, oh my God, you can't beat the irony. That PAC paid for the mailers for Justine Iannotti. And you guys, of course, will know that name because I've talked about her several times. She's one of the other 2 alleged fake candidates who I've mentioned. And she's the one who just all of a sudden, after living in Florida for many, many years, or her whole life, I don't recall, but all of a sudden she just picks up and moves to Sweden when the heat started getting turned up on this case. Court documents also revealed that investigators interviewed a woman named Haley DeFilippis, I believe is how you pronounce it. It's DeFilippis, and DeFilippis or Felippes was listed as the chairperson, treasurer, and registered agent for that super PAC, for the PAC, I should say, The Truth. So if these people had any sense whatsoever, which they don't, but if they did, they'd come clean, because this is all obviously going to come out. It's already coming out. Whoever talks first gets the best plea deal. So they better make the most of their time. They better just fess up and admit to what they did, because it's very obvious. All right, guys. I will let you know when I hear more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Like, share, subscribe. Please become a supporter or a friend of the show so we can hang out every month. And take care. Thanks again so much. I'll talk with you soon.